In this video, we're going to take a look at two of the date-related functions in Excel. We're going to look at the today function and the now function. Let's start off with the today function. The today function is just the word today. It's a formula, so we have to start with an equal sign. And there are no arguments to the today function. So you might be tempted to just leave the parentheses off, which I'm going to do here. And you don't want to do that because it doesn't recognize this without the parentheses. The parentheses are a syntax feature in Excel that identify a name as being a function. So even if there are no arguments, you still have to put them in. If you don't put that in, it thinks that you're referring to some range on your worksheet, and there's no range called today, so that's why we get the name error. So let's go ahead and fix it. We'll put the parentheses in, and it comes back and tells us what the day is today. Okay, we got lots of options for formatting that. We've got two that are up here on our little shortcut. We've got a short date and a long date, which is really long. Let's make this a little wider. So it'll tell you the date spelled out for the day and the month spelled out, and the month, the day and the year. Let's go back to the short date, and there are a bunch of other options too. If you don't like either one of those two, you can right click, go to Format Cells, and your Format Cells dialog box comes up. And date is already selected because it knows we've got a date here right now. And look at all the options we've got here for date. So you can, just about any way that you would want the date, you'll probably find it here. The difference between this one and this one is just, it'll always put a leading 0 out there to make every month and day a 2-digit number instead of just a 1-digit number in some cases. So they're all the same number of characters. You always get 8 characters and 2 slashes. We've got some other choices here. I'm not sure why this one is in here twice. That's why it's in there twice, because of the 0 in the front. Some more choices here. If you don't care about the year, you can just display the month and the day. We've got a few options down here that actually include the time, which we'll talk about in a minute or two. There are also down here some custom formats, and the ones that have the M's and the D's and the Y's stand for month and day and year. And you can create your own custom format down here. If you don't like any of these either, you can basically create your own using D's and M's and hyphens and slashes and so on. You can easily Google it on the internet and come up with a custom format, but I really doubt if there are too many times when you're going to need that, because I think Excel has you pretty well covered here with the existing options. So I'm just going to cancel out of this. This is probably what you want most of the time anyway. Now let's take a look at the other date-related function that we're going to look at in this video. It's the now function, and it's formula, so we got to start with an equal sign and the word now, and it is the other function in Excel that requires no arguments but still requires parentheses. So if you leave the parentheses out, you're going to get that name error message. And if you hit the enter key, you see the difference between the today and now. Today just gives you the date. Now gives you the date and the time. So on a 24-hour clock. So this is 3:30 p.m. If you don't like a 24-hour clock, which I really don't like, we can change it. But the only option we've got for time here is just to show the time. And if I pick that one, it completely gets rid of the date. So let's right-click on this, and let's go down to Format Cells. And let's take a look at some of our time options. And most of these are for time, but then we've got some options here for AM and PM, or a 24-hour clock. So I'm going to pick the one with AM and PM. And there are also some custom ones for this one as well. If you scroll up a little bit, you'll see some. The H and the M and the S stands for hours and minutes and seconds. And again, if you don't like what you find up here, you can probably find something down here. So let's go, and we will leave it on this one. We'll click on OK. And that's what it looks like. Now let's take a look at what is lying underneath these two cells. Let's select both of those cells here, and then let's go up here and just change it to general format. And you'll see what we expected with the today is a serial number representing today's date. With now, we get a serial number representing today's date, followed by a decimal fraction carried out to 5 places representing the fraction of the day that has elapsed. So the time on that was approximately 3:30. And let's go here and we'll do, we'll figure out what that is. We'll do 64641 divided by 100,000, which is what that fraction is. We'll multiply that by 24, and we should get, around 15 and a half, when we do that. So it must have been a little bit past. So that means 15.5 hours have elapsed if I multiply that by the number, that fraction by the number of hours in a day. So we're a little over half. If I go back here and I format this as, I've got to right click and format it, go to format cells, and let's go to date, and we'll go down to the bottom here where it does date and time combined. Click on OK. And so it's 1532. One thing about the date and time both, let's go back and format that as a date again. One thing about these two values here is they do not change. They will stay the same until the spreadsheet is refreshed. Okay, now the spreadsheet normally gets refreshed whenever you make a change in it. So that if you've got the spreadsheet open, you're probably making some changes in it. It's probably going to get refreshed fairly often. But this will stay here on 332. If you look down in the lower right-hand corner, you see the time has been updated to 333. But the last time I updated this, it was 332. Now, if I hit F9, which is the keyboard shortcut for updating the spreadsheet, it will automatically update, and I guess almost more than a minute passed because now it's 3:34, and that's what we get up here. Same thing with the date. If I leave this spreadsheet open from a few minutes before midnight until a few minutes after midnight, it will still say 8/8/2019. It will not switch over to 8/9/2019 until I refresh it sometime after midnight. So just be aware that these are not clocks or calendars that are constantly updated. They only get updated every time the spreadsheet itself is updated. Okay, one more thing related to formatting. Let's take this now function and let's format it as a short date. Okay. Now, it looks like what we've got in these two cells is exactly the same. I'm going to get rid of this other business here. But they are not the same. If I check to see if A1 is equal to A2 and hit enter, I'm going to get false. And what you have to remember is that formatting in Excel controls the way that something is displayed. It does not change the underlying value. So these two are, this is being displayed as a date. Obviously, this is being displayed as a date. Basically, we're just truncating that fractional part. It's not being truncated in the underlying value, but for display purposes, it is being truncated. And they are not the same, though. They look the same, but they are not. So if I go back and, go back to general here and format them, then you can see that they're not the same. So that's one thing you need to be aware of, not just with dates and times, but with anything in Excel. Remember that what you see in the cell is the formatted value of the underlying value, and the underlying value may have a little more precision than what is actually displayed in the cell.